Hi, good evening, and happy Earth Day. I'm Lonnie Stonich, the Executive Director of FAN, and I'm excited to welcome you to tonight's conversation between fan favorite Julie Lythcott Haims and Gia Clark, also a fan favorite. Thank you for attending. FAN is a nonprofit organization that presents a high-quality speaker series offered free to the public on a wide variety of topics, including human development, mental health, education, and social justice, among others. We have over 125 videos of past events archived on our website and our YouTube channel, so please be sure to explore. And now for formal introductions. Julie Lythcott Haims, who we love, it's her third time here for FAN, is the New York Times best-selling author of the Anti-Helicopter Parenting Manifesto, How to Raise an Adult. That was visit number 1. Her TED Talk on the subject has more than 5 million views, and in 2020, she became a regular contributor with CBS This Morning on parenting. Her second book, visit number 2, is the critically acclaimed and award-winning prose poetry memoir, Real American, which illustrates her experience as a Black and biracial person in white spaces. And just last week, her third book, Your Turn, How to Be an Adult, visit number 3, was released, and we are thrilled to welcome her back to the FAN stage in quotation marks. There she is. You can even see her right there. A lifelong Evanston resident, Gia Clark, my friend, studies advertising, public relations, and anthropology at Loyola University, Chicago. Ms. Clark is a founding member and marketing co-chair of the Honors BIPOC Coalition, an organization dedicated to diversifying the honors program at Loyola. I'm sure that's some heavy lifting over there. I say that affectionately. Ms. Clark works as a media associate at Insurance AUM Journal, and she leads freshman orientations at Loyola. I will also note that Gia was a member of the inaugural group of FAN Fellows in 2019. So now everybody, you're done with me. Let's welcome Julie Lythcott Haims and Gia Clark.
Hi.
Thank you so much, Lonnie Stonich, Anne-Marie Anderson, the entire FAN team, the entire FAN community, Gia Clark. So great to meet you and to be in this moment with you. Here I am. I'm the one that doesn't belong. I'm the outsider from California. I'm here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Y'all know I wish I could be in Chicagoland. You know, my heart is very much there. You know that I grew up a couple hours north in Wisconsin. I have fam in Chicago, and I always feel a connection, a kinship to folks in Chicagoland. And I just want everybody present to hear me say, Lonnie Stonich and FAN is the top parent ed in the country. Just so thoughtful, organized, on top of it in every dimension. Just hear this and be grateful. Y'all just think this is what, is normal. Okay. It's not. It's special. So I know we're all grateful to get to be a part of FAN and to have FAN in our lives.
FAN's the best. We absolutely love FAN. I've loved every FAN event I've been a part of as an attendee, and I'm excited to be here today with you. So just getting started, I just want to say, as part of the target audience of this book, as a young person, almost 20 something, just 20, that this book was really impactful. And I think that just a great way to start out is that this book is it'll get the job done and it'll help you. So I think first, I just want to start out and ask you what led you to write this book, because so much of what's important about it is the structure of it. So what led you to be inspired to write this?
Thank you, Gia. I'm delighted to be in this format with you. I'm the brand new author of this book, and we're just figuring out the best way to talk about it. So this, y'all, is the first time I've been in dialogue one-on-one with a 20, did you say you're 20?
I'm 20, yeah.
Perfect, like target audience for this book. I can't wait to hear what you want to ask me about it and what you have to say about it. This is very exciting for me as its author. Thank you again, Gia. Okay. There are really two very different answers to your question. What made me write this book? My publishing house made me write this book. That's the honest, factual answer. That is, this book was a New York Times bestseller, and they said, oh, hey, how about you write a sequel for young adults struggling with adulting? And I agreed, and I signed a contract, which is an obligation and an opportunity. I was grateful that they believed in me, but I was nervous. How the heck am I going to, I can't remember if Lonnie is rated PG or rated R, so I'm going to try to monitor my language. If you want to put in the chat, Lonnie, if I'm allowed to swear, let me know. Okay, how the heck am I going to purport to be an authority on a stage of life all humans go through? Adulting is, if you survive childhood, you're an adult, okay? Adulting is the set of decades between childhood and death, okay? A set of long decades, we hope, where we're healthy and on top of things. Okay, so who am I to be an authority on this? I'm not some sage, wise guru on the hill going to expound upon, the philosophy of adulting. That's not me. I'm not that. Who is that? I was like, we either are all authorities on adulting or none of us is. So I couldn't find the authority that I felt I needed to write the book I had agreed to write. But then, and this is the second part of the answer, I was able to summon my memory of myself as the dean of freshmen at a university up the hill, where my job was to care about the young people in my midst who were struggling with big questions like, what would I do with my life if it was only up to me? And how do I find my way out of this trouble I've gotten myself into? And how do I recover from this setback that wasn't my fault? And how do I choose when I have so many amazing options? My job was listen, be compassionate, just try to shine a light to illuminate for them what was going on for them. Never give answers, but just kind of help shape their thinking about stuff. So I summoned that voice, compassionate, rooting for young people to make it in this one precious life. And I put that voice in the pages of this book. And so I finally got there, and that happened right before, that was the summer of 2019. And I was going along, and then a pandemic hit, and it became very meta because part of the book is life entails a whole lot of struggle. And then I was dealing with the struggle. Like, how can I write a book telling other people how they're going to be just fine when I'm not feeling fine? Oh, wow. Okay, so if I just keep trying, but also look after myself, maybe turns out to be very meta and very illustrative of the point of the book. So that's how we got here.
Perfect answer. I think that's so much of the book that stands out is that you're going to be going through these things for a long time. Like you said, from the time you're not a kid to the time you die. So a lot of the big issues that people are curious about as a young person are going to be recurring at different stages. So thank you for that explanation. I think that one thing that's kind of stands out about this book specifically, and that's been very important just in our brief conversations before, is the diverse perspectives that this book brings in. So if you could just elaborate and kind of explain to everyone what that looks like within the book, because to me, it really stood out as something completely different from any kind of self-help nonfiction type book that I've read.
Yeah. So I'm a bit of a rebel. I'm a bit of a transgressor of norms. I think I am that way because I am biracial, because I was born to people who transgress the rules and norms and mores of society to fall in love and get married and give birth to little old me. So I came into this world unexpected. I came into this world implicitly not okay in the minds of some. And I think now 53 years into this life, I can say that I am constantly questioning norms and rules. Lonnie knows this. And my books do the same. So a traditional self-help book is just, let me give you some exposition on a topic and give you some tips. Let me kind of tell it with some examples. And too often in nonfiction self-help, but nonfiction more broadly and literature broadly speaking, advice is given seemingly from the perspective of white folks, straight white middle-class folks, for straight white middle-class folks. Nothing wrong with y'all, But there's just a whole lot of the rest of us who feel excluded when narratives are written in a way that seems to not imagine our existence, whether we're of color or queer or gender non-binary or poor or not very educated or, et cetera. We have mental health issues. Okay. So I was determined, if I'm going to write a book on the stage of life between childhood and death, and to be useful to people struggling with bits of it, I was going to tell the how of it, show how it works by putting stories of other people from all walks of life in these pages. I tell some of my own stories, my own struggles, lessons I learned the hard way. I'm trying to offer that to readers with a lot of reassurance. Like, it's okay. You will screw up. I screwed up. Here's the proof. Look what I learned. Learn from me. But also let me put close to 36 other humans from all these walks of life that I just sort of alluded to, so that when you read this book, no matter who you are, my hope is each reader at some point will have cause to say, oh my gosh, she had me in mind when she wrote this sentence, this paragraph, this page, this chapter. I do believe, Gia, that all humans do matter. And as a writer, because I want all humans to matter, I have decided I got to put those of us traditionally marginalized onto the center of my pages, along with those who are traditionally centered. Don't worry, centered. There are white people in this book. Don't worry. It just is broadly inclusive in so many respects. And one of the major points of inclusion beyond race, beyond socioeconomic status, is mental health. The fact that so many of us have a mental health condition, a diagnosis, or not a diagnosis, but a situation, a disability, a difference, a disease. I have not just said sort of asterisk, go to page 400 if you might have an issue. I am trying to normalize in the giving of advice. Oh, hey, this may be hard for you if you have social anxiety. Oh, hey, this may be a challenge if you're on the autism spectrum. Oh, hey, if you're depressed, you're going to find this part to be a good option for you. In other words, embedded in the advice is an embrace of humans as we come in our complex myriad differences, which supports the fact that we are all different. And I hope makes the point, hey, guess what? We're also so much the same in terms of our intrinsic needs and wants. So I'm trying to do a lot here. It's more than just a book on adulting. It's a book on all humans mattering.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I think in certain lines, like this is multiple times throughout the book that I noticed where you would bring up something like that, like, oh, you might be dealing with this thing. This might be a therapy problem rather than a book problem. And I think that that's important to acknowledge, that a lot of these large scale issues that a lot of people are facing at all ages might not be something that you can always do by yourself. So I really like the inclusion of that, in addition to just being inclusive of everyone's differences. So thank you. That really did stand out, especially as someone who isn't always represented in those books. It was impactful and important.
Say one other thing, if I may, but
yeah,
just
go ahead.
You know me, I'm long-winded, but I'm trying to just make a succinct point here, which is when we are of color in particular, we are accustomed in this country to reading nonfiction and fiction and newspaper articles and magazine articles that go something like this. Person A, person B, person C, person D, whose brown skin glistened in the sun. Okay. And that's a signal that the author, the journalist, the writer has made some assumptions about person A, B, and C that are so embedded that they don't even have to tell us what the assumption is. They know, we know what they meant by not giving skin color. That is how whiteness can linger on the page unnamed. And as people of color, we're like, really? You're just going to mention, oh, there's a Black person, right? Come on. We are in the 21st century. We are so much more capable than that. So in these pages, I do name identities in myriad ways as my storytellers shared them with me, in a deliberate attempt to try to, just let's stop normalizing some and marginalizing others. And that's one of the ways in which I did it.
Yes, absolutely. And definitely comes across so well. All of the people that you interview, yourself included, family members, but especially those people of all the diverse identities at the end of each chapter, they feel like fully fleshed out people, which is not something you always encounter. So that was,
thank you.
That was excellent. Some of these chapters, like we've mentioned, they're talking about specific problems and specific situations that young people might be facing. So I was wondering if there's any in particular that were maybe your favorite chapter or your favorite one to write, or one that was most important to you.
For sure. Chapter 5 of 13 is the first chapter I wrote that my publishing house accepted. They rejected 3 of my attempts to write this book. So failure, struggle, totally happened to me, will definitely happen to me again. That's a reality of life and was my reality with this book. But chapter 5, it's called Stop Pleasing Others. They have no idea who you are. And this was me summoning that memory of me as a dean who was encountering students who couldn't bring themselves to major in what they wanted, to choose the summer work that they wanted, to choose the work after college or graduate school program that they wanted, couldn't choose the identities, couldn't name and claim and be out around the various identities that mattered to them, out of a fear of disappointing others. And one of my purposes, I think, in this life is to try to be with humans and say, you do matter as you are. You are good enough as you are. You are deserving of dignity and to be treated with kindness because you exist, not because of your GPA or because of the house you live in or the profession you have. I have always rooted for those who have the least. I have always rooted for the underdog. I'm rooting for all of us, but some folks need rooting for a little bit more because they are downtrodden. So that's my favorite chapter because it really gets to, all right, how do you know what you want out of this one wild and precious life, which the poet Mary Oliver has articulated in one of her poems. You listen for your inner voice, and inner voice, Gia, is spirit, soul, gut, wherever in your body you think your inner voice lives, great, but it is there. And often we refuse to hear it until we're miserable. You know, my blood pressure is so high at work, I'm miserable. Fine, I'm going to listen to my inner voice saying, leave this job and go do that job. Or I have a colleague friend who says, you know, my hair was falling out. That's when I finally gave myself permission to say, maybe this job isn't what I want. I'm rooting for us to get to the point of honoring what we really want before the high blood pressure, before the hair is falling out, before the misery, which is often when we finally give ourselves permission to seize the lives we want. I'm saying, no, your inner voice is in there. So is the voice of your parents, your extended family, your peers, society, the media, telling you what you should do or what you should not do. And when we listen to our inner voice, the more we can kind of listen for it, it's the louder it gets. We get better at saying like, oh, what I really want is this. If you're having trouble, as you hear me, if you're young or any age, frankly, and you're like, well, I don't know what my inner voice is telling me. I would say to you, the prompt would be, ask yourself, what would I do with this life if it was just up to me? If nobody was judging me, what would I do? That clarity might just come. And then you have to have the courage to honor it. You have to have the courage to say, oh, hey, what I really want out of this one life is to be a whitewater rafting instructor. Even though my family are all lawyers, I need to go to the Colorado River, get my certification and be an outdoor naturalist person who takes people down this amazing, amazing river. Who the hell has the right to tell you that that's not a legitimate course in life? Nobody. I don't care whether it's culinary school or whitewater rafting or being an artist or being a theater director, or heck, if you want to be a lawyer and your family's trying to turn you into a ballet dancer, go be a lawyer. It's up to you. And that's really the sweet spot of that chapter. Stop pleasing others. They have no idea who you are. So can I ask you a question?
Of course.
When I say that, inner voice, do what you know is right, what you're good at, and what you love. What came up for you as you read that?
So this is actually really funny. I think you'll really like this answer. I am a tour guide at the admissions office at Loyola, and as I've been getting busier, I've been trying to figure out like what am I going to cut from my schedule, and that's like it's a side job for me. It's not my main source of income, so it's always been like on the table as something that could get cut. But working with freshmen, either in a tour guide capacity or in admissions job, it's never been an option to get rid of, really, even though it's been an option. I've never really considered that, which is weird to think about, because it's just been kind of, oh, I do it twice a week and now that's a thing I do. But as I've been getting older and thinking like, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do right out of college, or if I need more time to like figure out a job that goes with my major, like college admissions is something I enjoy doing, on that student level. So that was what came up for me right away.
Why? So why? We now know what, but why? Why do you suppose the college admissions work is something you would never want to cut? What's it doing for you?
This is like, I'm an only child, but I am very much like interacting with people that are younger than me, but I'm not a kids person. I like people who are young adults or teens, high school. And I know that I was very stressed out during that time of my life. So being able to help students enjoy the university that I love so much, or even if they don't choose to go to Loyola and instead decide this isn't the school for me, being able to help them make that decision always makes me happy and always makes me smile. So, yeah.
So you don't want to be in work where you serve others, you help others, you're able to sort of be an ambassador, opening up opportunities for other people. That's cool to know. Yeah. It's cool to know your why, because that's really sort of what's your purpose, what's your plan, what's your path, what are the motivations that would make you choose one job or another? What does a job need to include by way of thinking or the way that the work is done in order for you to feel that your why is satisfied? That's a message that runs through this book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something especially that people around my age group struggle with, because when we go into, whether we're going into college or going into whatever we're doing, a lot of times you're put into these categories of like, this is the job you're doing, or this is what you're studying. But if you don't know why you're doing it, it can be really difficult to do. So yeah, right. That was definitely something that was really important to me when I was reading that chapter. Was like, I was like, oh, what is my why? What am I thinking about? Yeah, I was definitely very self-aware while I was reading that chapter.
Cool.
Yeah. Speaking of the why, is there anything, speaking of just your writing and becoming someone who clearly wants to help other people with all of your books, but especially ones surrounding parenting, why did you do that?
Yeah. Well, I was a dean on a campus, seeing a lot of overparented young people, very bright on paper, very academically accomplished, parents still solving problems, making decisions, taking care of business, registering them for this and that, arguing with professors. And I thought, come on, folks, they're not 4, they're not 8, they're not 12, they're 18, 20, 22. They could be in the army, but here they are in this manicured campus. Why do you act like they're so helpless? And then I began to appreciate, well, maybe they are helpless or kind of helpless because they've been overmanaged to this point. So they do lack the basic skills around fending for themselves. And we should talk about what fending is, because that's sort of like building block number 1, right. In addition to the more lofty or esoteric skills of thinking for themselves, imagining, dreaming, planning for the future they want to put in place for themselves. It was kind of the basics that really made me worry that parenting had veered off course. Young people were less prepared to adult than ever. That's certainly why I wrote that first book. And now this third book comes directly appealing to the young adults who may be feeling a little underbaked for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I've seen that, growing up and being in like a higher achieving like high school environment and then moving into the university environment too. That's something that like I've dealt with myself. That's not to slight my parents in the slightest, but I've noticed myself and my peers. So it's definitely something that's very out there and visible.
Right.
I know that a lot of your books was written pre-pandemic, but there's also touches of the pandemic in it, and it's definitely it's present. And one thing I wanted to ask you, and I think that a lot of attendees were also wondering as well, was how can like young people, but also parents, deal with the feeling of failure, but that struggle that comes with COVID, that comes with this pandemic, because we all were kind of put out of our depth here. No one knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And yeah, do you get what I'm saying with this question? How
Yeah.
can we cope with that together?
Yeah. So actually the answer is embedded in the question. Together is certainly one of the ways we will cope. But let me back up and say, yeah, it's been a hell of a year for reasons, including the pandemic and beyond the pandemic. And humans have historically been through hard times periodically. It is the nature of things that we live in a chaotic universe. We are largely not in control. Isn't that terrifying? Yeah. We try to be in control. We try to clamp things down and plan and be perfectionists and like make sure we're controlling our environment. But the truth is, we really start to live much more healthily when we realize, accept so much is outside of my control. Bad things can happen. All I'm in control of is how do I act? How do I respond? That's basically all each one of us as individuals can be in control of. And when we can come to peace with that, then we can kind of take a deep breath and relax into what am I in charge of and realize that the rest of the stuff is just going to happen. Challenge, struggle, natural disaster, tragedy make us stronger. There's that old adage, that which doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And it's true. We develop strength from skills that we develop as we struggled. We develop strength from the resilience that we developed as we struggled. Resilience is learning I can cope when bad things happen. We are all incredibly resilient, having been through these last 14 months. Okay, it's taken a lot out of us. It's caused sadness and anguish and despair and grief and, some very practical financial hardship for many of us, actual loss of life, illness, loss of jobs. I mean, yes, it's caused us strife. And I encourage everybody to think, okay, but what did I manage to do? Often a great reframe is, okay, the pandemic told me I couldn't do X, Y, and Z, but what could I do? What did I decide was within my control? What did I manage to take care of? Maybe I'm proud of myself for how I just stayed, managed to keep up with my job despite all of this, or I managed to do online learning, even though it was really challenging, or I managed to look after my younger siblings when my parents, were so busy, or I planted a garden, or I began to learn a new language, or you know what, maybe it's just that I took care of my mental health and I'm still here. That's a huge victory for many of us. Okay. So when we reflect on what we were able to do and what we did experience that we're proud of, that cognitive process helps strengthen us for the next time. It's like we take all of that memory of how much stronger we got or what we did achieve despite the difficulty, we take that into the next battle. And we all collectively went through this. So many young people have asked me, I'm worried I'm not going to be able to talk to anybody when I get out of the pandemic. I'm so out of practice. And I've said, you know what? I went through a bad earthquake when I was 21. We had a bad earthquake here in San Francisco. I thought I was going to die. It was scary. The awesome thing was every single human being in the San Francisco Bay Area had been through it. We all had our own unique version, but we all felt the shake. Nobody had to say, excuse me, but I was just in an earthquake. So same with the pandemic. We all know we have been restricted, locked down, prevented, all of that. So when we get back out, I know that every gathering is going to be, let me tell you my pandemic story. Oh, you haven't heard the worst of it. It's going to be like, it's called sharing war stories. It's the stories of what we've been through. We like to hear each other's stories. We like to build upon each other's stories. That's what humans do. So that's coming. We're going to get to share the hardship. We're going to get to laugh and listen and grieve and cry with each other. We are going to uniquely come out of this together, stronger and with more clarity about what matters and what doesn't. When you get reminded that life is finite and precious, as has happened for us all, you say, okay, I'm going to take this job, not that. I'm going to leave this bad situation because I've been reminded that my life is precious. I'm going to commit to this person in relationship because I know they matter, or I'm going to pare away this friendship because it's not really a friendship that's working for me. We're going to come out of this sharper and more honed about making decisions, showing up in spaces with people that matter most to us, and paring away the stuff that we were kind of just going through the motions and doing.
This is such a great, optimistic way to approach it. I feel like a lot of the book and what you've just said is about taking everything that we go through as a learning experience, Something I wanted to ask you about that you've brought up a couple of times already in passing, and is a large topic in this book, is failure.
Yeah.
And how young people can cope with failure, but also how whether it's our parents or our older family members can be open with us about their own failures. So if you could just touch a little bit about failure, I guess.
So I call failure one of life's beautiful F words. We all know the F word. Okay. The beautiful F words are fail, flail, flounder, fumble, fall, and feedback. And I have a chapter 3, you're not perfect. I'm trying to counteract perfectionism. I got Queen Elsa on the page saying, let it go from Frozen. Just, you're not perfect. Okay. Forget that. You're not. No, you're not. Okay. That's what the book is saying. Like, stop. All right. You're not. You're making everybody crazy trying to be perfect. You're not. None of us is perfect. We're here to learn and grow. We only learn and grow when we stumble. Okay. So that's why these are life's beautiful F words. We have to experience some stumbling, some falling, some floundering and fumbling in order to get stronger and better. Here in Silicon Valley, the engineers, the designers, they have this mantra, fail your way forward. They're not trying to waste resources or money or time. They're saying, we know we need to create something, test it out, see what's wrong with it, iterate, make it better, test it again, see what's wrong with it. And at some point, we'll get to a place where we can be like, damn, look what we made. We didn't get it right the first time. Who would? Nobody. All right. So we got to embrace these F words as life's biggest, greatest teachers. Now, the problem is a lot of us parents think if my kid isn't perfect, they won't get into the Loyola, they won't get to the right college, they won't have the right future. Therefore, we have to perfect and micromanage their every moment so that they are flawless and they get to the future. And I'm here to tell you, I've seen that. And you might get your kid to that future because you manicured their path, and then they don't know how to handle the run-of-the-mill struggles that will come academically, or rejected from a sorority or fraternity or a club or team, or they got a bad grade and they don't know what to do because you've not let them experience what trial and error and trying again looks like. If you've behaved that way as a parent, you've weakened your child. And this book doesn't presume every reader has had that experience, but certainly will at times speak to those who have been overmanaged and overheld and are now sort of stuck and not able to make progress because everything feels daunting and frightening and bewildering and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that failure I think that especially with these things like a pandemic or like everything that's going on in the world, when these things fail for us, like we have no choice in the failure, I think that becomes even more obvious that like, oh, I need to learn how to deal with this. So yes, thank you for bringing that up so much. I think we don't talk about failure a lot, especially as a student. So a question that I have for you, that is a personal question, but I think you'll probably have some wonderful, insightful answer. That if you could tell yourself when you were the target audience for this book, one thing, what would you tell her?
Oh my goodness. When I was the target audience of this book, I was a biracial, Black, light-skinned woman who was so filled with self-loathing because my growing up years had taught me something was wrong with me because of my skin color and my ancestry, my African American ancestry. And so that's actually the entire subject of my middle book, Real American. But in the point being, I was so insecure about myself and about my right to be treated with dignity. I was just trying to never be called the N-word again. So I was showing up and performing for people as I call them model Negro, so that I wouldn't be slighted again, which meant I was making choices in furtherance of what they valued and they wanted me to be and they approved, this sort of nameless, faceless society. And in contrast to showing up and doing what I wanted to do. So that little self, that 20-something self, needed an older person to say, you know what? all of this performing you're doing for them, that's going to not matter to you at some point. Don't you worry, that self-love is coming, and you will give yourself permission to be the person you know yourself to be. One of my bad decisions made in furtherance of pleasing others is at the heart of chapter 5, Stop Pleasing Others. I had gone to law school, Gia, to help people, just like you love admissions work because you get to care about these people who are coming up on the path behind you, and you're helping show the way, and you're answering questions and being of use, of service. I went to law school to be of use, to give a voice, be an advocate to those who are marginalized. But I was so insecure as a young Black woman in law school. I came out with a corporate law offer, which is not to knock corporate law. Some of you listening are corporate lawyers. More power to you if you love it. I didn't love it. I was meant to be a public interest lawyer, but I so desperately needed the approval of society. I went in the direction of a well-paid, highly lauded career that made me miserable. And that's when I learned it's not enough to just be great at your job or good at your job. I was good at it. They were mentoring me. I was given opportunity. I was paid well. But if you don't love it, you feel like a mechanistic drone going through your own life. This happens to kids who are great at math and science. And people say, go into engineering, and they do because they're good at it. But if their heart, if their spirit, if their inner voice is saying, but wait, what we really want to do is this, doesn't matter how good they are at it, they will feel like a drone or like a programmed robot in their own lives. So I would like to have given myself that advice sooner than I did. And I would hope that if the younger me had picked up this book, I might have felt some of these chapters really calling to me. And I hope I would have had the courage to heed what I heard coming up inside of me.
That's actually a great segue, because the question I was thinking of next, this book covers so many different things. Like we've talked about a lot about the chapters that are about dealing with your own like identity and finding what you're interested in and really focusing internally. But there's also some chapters that are more concrete. And so like one specifically I'm thinking about is about financial literacy, basically, which is something that a lot of us are, we don't have those skills or other hard skills like that, either because they haven't been taught to us at a young age or it's just intimidating. Yeah. How did you choose which, I know like finance is kind of an important one because it's just adulting, quote unquote, right. But how did you choose what was going to be the focuses?
Yeah. So part of it was what came up and out of me, but part of it was arguments with my editor. She said, you have to have a chapter on money. You have to tell people about 401ks. And again, I was like, who am I to tell people about 401ks? I mean, I have one. Doesn't mean I can write some paragraphs about it. She said, you can't have an adulting book that doesn't cover 401ks. I said, fine. So the book goes like this, basically. Talks about what is adulting, the definition, talks about fending for yourself. What does that mean? Taking care of the basics, food, shelter, body, obligations, deadlines. That's what people think adulting is. It is, but it's so much more. Then we get into the you're not perfect. You're here to learn and grow, develop your good character, listen to that inner voice, get unstuck. And we need to talk about that chapter. Start talking to strangers, which is about humans, how humans are everything. And you've got to be in relationship with humans in all manner of speaking, then money. And then take care of your mind and body. And then when the shit hits the fan and terrible, terrible things happen, how you're going to cope and then try to make things better in the world. Use your superpowers, mindfulness, kindness, and gratitude, and then keep going. That's the entire arc of the book. So money comes about 2/3 of the way through. And the points that I'm making are you're 20 something or 30 something. You got to care about your 60 and 70 something self. That older self will be grateful that the younger self was thinking ahead. That said, you can't be an indentured servant to your 65-year-old self. You don't just defer all enjoyment in furtherance of that person's retirement. You have to be able to hold some, these sort of competing priorities at once. You've got to look after current self and also be thinking about future self. I teach about the compound value, the value of compounding interest, how money set aside and invested now grows and grows and grows and becomes this enormous thing. If you just have the discipline to start young, you will be dancing with delight when you get older. So that had to be in there. But I also talk about money being an emotional thing. Mm-hmm. Don't let anyone tell you what you're supposed to spend your money on. You spend it on what is right for you. If you want to be a social worker and that doesn't pay very much, and you take out loans to go to social work school, some people are going to say that's irrational. Well, to hell with them. They don't want to be social workers. They want to be economists. Good for them, right? Social work school costs money. And you don't get rich from social work, but you get a tremendous amount of intrinsic reward from the work of doing social work. So you decide, just know why you are choosing to spend your money on this. Don't let money happen to you. Don't let debt happen to you. Be intentional. And we talk about spending and saving and debt and, how money grows. So, yeah, that's one of the more practical chapters for sure. And I've got 2 stories at the end of folks, both of whom grew up working class, one of whom probably even working poor, one of whom has had a job as a driver with UPS and has a pension and has stock and has a second home on a lake in Florida. And just the most amazing story from the working poor through stocking shelves in Winn-Dixie to community college to UPS. And that loyalty between employer and employee, which is more rare today than ever, is very much in place at UPS. And what an inspiring story. Solidly middle to upper middle class, sent his own son to college. And someone else is a professional dancer, had all these student loans from a bachelor's and MFA in dance. How am I going to pay off these loans when my dance gigs are paying this and my loans seem to be like this? She put together a plan, discipline. When she wasn't dancing, she was doing temp work. People were eating her food. She'd carefully buy food at Trader Joe's and put it in the fridge, and colleagues were eating her food, and she put a sign on the door saying, please don't eat my food. I'm paying down my student loans. And when she finally paid down this enormous debt, she went into the New York subway with a sign and a rented dress and a sign that said, hug me, I'm debt free. And she picked up a side hustle of financial planning. She's becoming certified. So when she's not dancing as a backup dancer for Beyonce or on Orange is the New Black, which she has done, she's giving other people advice about how to manage their money. And she has learned that the more educated folks are, the more embarrassed and ashamed they are, that they don't understand how money works. So she's there saying, it's all right. I got you. You're going to be okay.
Yeah, those chapters were, especially the stories at the end, were so, I feel like they really tied it all together because they did tap in again so much to people doing what they wanted to do or what they felt was right for them to do. Yeah. So it all really did come together, especially the dancer story. I loved her.
She's amazing.
Yeah. So you want to talk about feeling unstuck.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you, and you kind of tipped off for me when we met on our prep call. I asked you, well, what resonated with you? What was your favorite chapter?
Mm-hmm. Feeling unstuck I have it open right here. Is it chapter 6, I believe? Yeah, chapter 6, getting out of neutral. And it was really about feeling like you're in a place of stagnation or being in a transitional period, which I really resonated with me because I was at college and then went home, and I'm living at home right now, which is not very far from my school, but I still felt like went step back. And I think that a lot of students and also people who went back either from being at school to living at home or from living on their own to living back with their parents, it made me feel less alone reading that chapter. And I think that with a lot of those chapters, I could identify a lot of people I would know who would be like, you should read this chapter because I think you'll feel better about what's going on with you in this chapter. And so, yeah, with every one, I was able to either feel it in myself that, okay, other people do this too. This is adulting. This is normal. Or I know someone who would benefit from reading this. So feeling unstuck was important to me. Especially given what's going on in the world and the fact that we're kind of in limbo right now. We don't really know what's going to happen with the pandemic and with everything. So yeah, feeling unstuck was definitely very impactful.
Good. I call that the hinge of the book. It's like, this is sort of what it all bends around, is the stuckedness. What did you think adulting was before you got your hands on my book? And what do you think it is now?
Yeah. So the words I think I used when I first answered this question were, I thought adulting was coffee and being stressed and going to work and wearing like a suit if that's what your job is, and having a planner, like just kind of being an adult, which is that's not what the adults in my life do. I don't know why that was the impression I had. And after reading it, I think it's knowing what's going on in your own life within reason. What can you control? And if you can control it, are you happy with how it's going? And if you're not happy with it, there's multiple things you can probably do about it. And if there isn't, then it's out of your control. And that was what I got.
That's it. This is a long ass book, and you just summarized it in like 3 sentences. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Gia, what did you want? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say that's to your credit, because in 5, I was able to do that based on your writing. So,
well, I am trying to demystify this topic that for many millennials and perhaps older Gen Zs now has become mysterious and frightening. I'm trying to say, yeah, it's not a mystery. It is hard at times, but it's also delicious. I use that word a lot in this book. Like I say, believe it or not, this adulting thing, you'll want to. And I think it's my job in the book to try to show like how actually enticing and amazing it is not to be a dog on a leash, as some children feel they are, yanked around or dragged down the path of life. Or just forever watched, by a parent. You're free range now. And yeah, there's responsibility with that, but also this delicious sense of agency. It's on me. I can handle it. I'm going to handle it. I got my own place. Wow, that feels so good. That stuff does feel good. And I'm just trying to help folks see that. Let me ask you this. Your parents. Mm-hmm. I've been told that some young adults and parents are reading it together, and it's becoming, the book is becoming like a portal or like a conduit, a third-party facilitator of a conversation between them. Like the kid might say, hey, we need to talk about this, or I want to flag this, or, hey, parent, this is intriguing. Did anything come up for you around, I really wish my parents better understood what this book is saying, or I really wish my parents understood this about me in the context of my becoming an adult? Was there anything that was coming up for you about your parents? And if not, what can parents more generally take from this book?
Yeah. First, hi to my parents. They're watching. I think that
They're very proud. I can swear to that, being a parent myself. Yes.
The one thing that I think was important, I think overall, I think all parents should probably hear, including my own, was that it's not always going to be your job, even now, to fix things if we're telling you about them. If it comes off that we're complaining, and we might be, it might just be because we need to vent, and venting is different from, hey mom, hey dad, I need help with this thing. Especially as we're getting older. And of course we still need help with certain things, and we're going to need advice on certain things. But I think that as we get older, and everyone's communication style is different, but indicating like, I am asking for advice on this versus I just need to tell you about this, and you need to say, oh, that sucks. There's a difference that I think adults and young people show to their peers a lot. But it's harder to do with people who are a different age from you. And I think that was something that you brought up in your own life in the book as well.
Well, yeah, my 19-year-old daughter right now would be nodding her head vigorously at your advice, because I'm a fixer, and I have learned to say when she calls with 4 different competing stressful things, I want to tell her like, oh, don't worry about this one. And what about this one? And she will remind me, Mom, I know how to fix it. I'm just, would you please just listen? So I've learned to say, I'm so sorry this is happening. Are you okay? Oh, that sounds awful. Do you want to vent? Or do you also want ideas? I'm here for all of it. And just try to back up and not let my need to fix. And like, please ask me for my ideas, because I have great to not let my own ego get in the way of what my daughter needs. So amen to that. I'm glad that, you feel the resonance of that in your life from my writing. I feel it too. Yeah. I know that Lonnie is standing by ready to tell us what questions are on people's minds. Time did fly, Lonnie. You were right.
I told you. That was so great. I love that. And Julie, I liked that you kind of flipped the script a little bit with Gia, and it was really, really great that you were posing some questions to her and pulling out some of that is just some great fodder for conversation. I might add, you're modeling great behavior for perhaps how to ask your 20 or 22-year-old child a question about themselves in a non-judgmental way. So I appreciate that very much. It's also one last point I'll make. Well, first of all, let me get to the sell part. Julie's book, wave it. Go ahead, Gia. I know you got it right in front of you, so hold it up. There you go. I usually have a copy. I told Julie, I gave Gia my copy and mine's not sitting right there. So, oh well. You can purchase a copy of that. Anne Marie has been putting commercials in chat. If you don't have chat open, I don't know, open up chat. You can buy a copy from the book stall. They'll send you not only a receipt in one email, but then you'll get a second email that will give you a link to register for after hours, which is going to start right at 8:00. I'll open it at 8. Julie and Gia both get a 5-minute bio break, but they'll be back in the room and then we'll let everybody in and we'll get Julie does have a road trip that she's going to be embarking on tonight. So those of you who are very used to these things lasting until 9:00, we're probably only going to go to about 8:40. So be prepared with your questions, jump in, come have some fun with us. Okay, so that's that part. I wanted to say, interestingly, one thing about this, Gia, to your point about that parents sometimes just simply need to listen and absorb as opposed to problem solving. I'm reminded, Julie, you'll probably relate to this. It is often something that's also talked about where sometimes it's gendered in psychological books, looking at that men problem solve, and sometimes women are complaining about things they don't actually want their spouse to solve the problem. They just want to talk about the problem. And sometimes there's this tension where the solving happens too fast as opposed to the empathetic listening and the creation of a dialogue, as opposed to they're not necessarily looking for a problem to be solved. They just want to be heard and understood. And I was struck by that, a similarity to that. Now, on to people's questions. So we have here, CJ asks, is the book for older adults? Maybe give them the age span, Julie, of who's the reader here? Who's your target reader?
Initially, we said the target reader was 18 to 34. We were just saying for those who articulate that they're struggling with adulting. But I got to tell you, CJ, I've had plenty of folks in their 40s, 50s, 60s say, I've changed my job because of this book. I've committed to a relationship because of this book. I've left a friendship because, the book helps you clarify what you want. So it turns out to be for adults of all ages.
I like that. Looks like a friend of yours, Jeff Stone, is letting you know that Ellen and Jeff Stone are watching.
Yay. Hi, Jeff and Ellen. Their son was one of my
said that they're your biggest fans in Chicago, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. No, Ellen and Joan.
I love Jeff and Ellen. So
Jeff, Ellen and Jeff. Joking, Ellen and Jeff. Don't hate. Don't hate. Okay. Pamela wants to know, what would you say to multi-identified young people who find it difficult to connect with their own parents of different identities as they try forming their own relationships with a partner who cannot embrace the multiplicity in their own future? A slightly complicated question. Do you need me to run it one more time?
Nope. I will say this, the older you get, the more you are in charge of choosing the communities in which you put yourself. Your workplace needs to be supportive of the identities that matter to you. The community and neighborhood you live in needs to be supportive of the identities you inhabit. Okay. If folks can't understand / accept who you are, you're going to have to say respectfully, but clearly, hey, this is who I am. I hope I can count on you someday to see that and love me for who I am. But until that happens, I'm going to continue to just be myself and hope that you come along. There's a person in the book, interestingly, in the Chicago area, as it turns out. His name's Akshay, former student of mine, Indian American, queer, came out to his parents at 22. They did not accept it for 10 years. He's a physician, every parent's dream, except he's gay. They didn't like that part. Well, he just kept being himself, originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan, now lives in Chicagoland. And his story is in these pages to illustrate the persistence of the self in the face of the obstacles of unaccepting family members.
Thank you for that. Lisa just posted, Julie, how do you address when one parent buys into your parenting style and the other remains quote, it's easier for me with less troubles to do for my child, unquote.
If parents aren't really on the same page with their parenting style, I think that's a great opportunity for some couples therapy.
Thank you. There was a couple questions submitted in advance, and I checked the attendee, and these people are in the room, so I'm going to go ahead and pose it to you. Kat asked, what suggestions do you have for parents who are trying to raise good humans and adults, but are struggling with being a good adult during the pandemic?
Yeah, of course you are struggling. Totally normal. Many of us are struggling. Some of us are struggling mightily. It is not abnormal to be anxious or depressed right now. Adam Grant just wrote a beautiful piece in the New York Times this week about how so many of us are languishing.
Yep.
There's wellness and there's depression. Well, languishing is sort of in the middle, sort of like meh, okay? I'd be transparent with your kid. Don't treat your kid like they're your therapist, like they have to solve your problems. You don't want to heap all of your burdens on them, but to share with your kid when they're struggling, to sit parallel to them, get a cup of tea or get just something neutral and yummy and say, you know what? I have really struggled with, and name a thing or two. You're trying to demonstrate to your kid that you're also struggling, that you get the fact that people are struggling. You might say to your kid, I'm working, when I'm anxious, I control. I know I get, for me, for example, I've said to my son, I know I get really snippy in the kitchen. I can get really terse and, and please know that has nothing to do with you. It's just me. I get to be a little bit of a control freak when I get anxious. I'm working on it, honey. Please know that. But in the meantime, don't take it personally. In other words, you're letting your kid in a little bit to your neuroses or your challenges. It's a way for them to see you as more human, but don't share so much that they feel, oh my gosh, now I have to take care of my parent because my parent's really struggling. Take your big struggles to the grownups in your life and also to therapists.
Okay, and we're at 7:57. Good, we have 3 minutes. Daphne asks, hi Daphne, I haven't seen you in a little while. Nice to see you. I remember you, Daphne. Many young adults are dealing with depression and anxiety, exasperated by the global pandemic. For those who are back home living with parents, what steps do you suggest for these young adults to enter and re-enter the adult world with a focus on self-sufficiency once the world is on the other side of the pandemic? How can parents be supportive as these young adults find their footing?
Yeah. So let's not go from complete dependency on parents in a pandemic to complete aloneness. As with the teaching of any skill, the 4 steps: first, as parents, first you do it for them, then you do it with them, then you watch them do it. You're still there for the just in case. And then finally, they can do it independently. So I would be narrating to your young adult offspring right now. So, hey, the pandemic looks like things are starting to open up. That's great. Let's talk about what's next for you. Where do you think you're going to be living this fall or this summer? Where do you think, can we talk about that and start to put some thinking, some plans starting to form in place so that we can transition to that? You might say to your young adult, what are some things, if your young adult is going to be on their own in an apartment this summer or fall, you might say, what can we do to support that transition? You're going to go from our place to there. Do you want to start making meals a couple days a week? Do you want to start doing the grocery shopping? How can we support? We don't want it to be you fall off a cliff and all of a sudden you're independent, because that's going to feel like a cold, hard slap in the face. So talking it through, building in transition time, and also intentionally deciding, figuring out how to give them more and more responsibility slowly so that when they do land, they land safely.
Good answer, Julie. And then we'll close out with Jana. Actually, I don't know if she is here, but this question stuck out in my mind that was submitted ahead of time. She asked, what particular advice do you have for parents of young Black men trying to emerge into adulthood at 24? So
there's Black sons. We have to simultaneously fill their souls with the knowledge that they are unconditionally loved by us. And we have to prepare them for the fact that their skin color may mean that some in the world treat them poorly or worse. It's a very, very careful balance. They need both pieces of information in order to be safe out there. The unconditional love will be a huge, huge anchor for them. And the information about how to stay smart and safe out there is life-saving. So it's both, and it's hard, and it can be despairing. And I think having Black men in their lives that they can turn to, uncles, mentors, fathers, community members who can kind of tell how they've weathered the storm. That's incredibly important, really, for all of us, regardless of our identity, but in this particular circumstance, for sure. Good luck to you. Appreciate the question.
Okay, and as the 8 o'clock bell rings, Gia, you did a fab job.
Thank you. Thank you so
Really
much.
great, so prepared. You hit it, doom, doom, doom. Perfect. Love you. Julie, you know, the door is always open, the red carpet always out. It's perma out, perma open to you. And to anybody that you tell me to open it to, you just let me know. Love you, love your work. We're so grateful to have had you, and we hope to have you again in the future. Everybody, thank you for coming.